Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Teach Middle East podcast. Today, I am with Chandini Misra, and she is the principal of Repton Al Barsha. Hope I rolled all of that off my tongue correctly, because you guys know sometimes I mess up people's names like it's no man's business. But she was kind enough to pronounce it for me before we came on air so that I didn't butcher it. But we are so delighted to have her on the podcast because we're going to talk all things leadership, all things education. But most of all, we're going to talk about her. We're going to get to know her, the woman who sits in that nice leather looking seat right there in the principal's office at Repton Al-Barsha. Welcome, Chandini.
Thank you, Lisa. Very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are most welcome. It's actually so interesting. Let me tell you, people, knowing people online, as in connecting with them, and then knowing them in person is a very fine line because I do feel like I know Chandini, but I actually haven't met her in person as yet. And likewise, she does not know me in person. So what we are going to be talking about today is going to be new to me as well. So I'm excited to dive in. Chandini, where did it all begin? Where are you from? Where did you grow up? And all of that good stuff.
All of that stuff. So I was born in India in a state called Orissa, which is on sort of the northeast coast. And then I moved to the UK. My dad got a job as a doctor in England. So I moved to the UK when I was quite young, didn't speak any English. So your classic ELL student in primary school. And but I have spent majority of my life in the UK. Really, really loved the whole sort of cultural transition. I love being part of both cultural identities. And I think it's wonderful now living in Dubai that there is so much of that, and that home is just really where you make it. So yeah, that was my sort of journey to the UK, and then grew up in the UK, went to school there, secondary school there and university, and started working there, moved to Dubai about 6 years ago.
Brilliant. And what part of the UK are you hailing from now that you're both?
Yorkshire, so a town called Wakefield, and within that a small village called Murfield. I've lost my northern accent, although it does come back. If I spend a long time back home, it does come back. But yeah, I have unfortunately lost my northern accent now.
So it's weird because Wakefield is very close to where my family and I now have a home in the outskirts of Leeds in a little place called Methley. It's a
Okay,
little
yeah.
village. Yeah, so it's quite close to Pontefract and Castleford, and but it's right there in a little corner. So I do know Wakefield quite well, Pinderfield and that area. So yes,
Yeah.
not so far.
And that's
Where
where I
did,
went to school actually. So Wakefield Girls High School was my school.
oh, okay. And I know that school. Quick one. In terms of family, are you an only child, siblings?
I have an older brother, and we ended up actually both doing science degrees at university. So there must have been an influence, I think, from my parents. He studied physics and I studied chemistry at university.
Brilliant. And so your journey into education started as a science teacher, I suppose.
It did, but actually, I didn't think when I was at university that I would end up in education. I chose a science degree because I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I loved science, I loved working with people, but I knew for sure I didn't want to be a doctor because I did the work experience and realized very quickly that I can't stand the sight of blood. I cannot handle needles. I'm still terrified of needles. It is very embarrassing every time I have to go and have a checkup or a blood test. I have to look away and tell them that I might get woozy. So really, the thought of working in a hospital still, gives me the creeps. I just couldn't do it. I have huge admiration and respect for the people that do. But I chose a science degree because I just loved science. I loved chemistry. I had an amazing chemistry teacher who really did inspire me. And during my time at university, I started news reading on the student radio. So I got a little bit into radio and presenting and looking at news, and then became a journalist after university. So I was a journalist for BBC News 24. Great fun, really enjoyed it. and then the headquarters relocated. I'm not sure if you remember, but they used to be in London, then they relocated to Salford. And at the time, I just got engaged, so I thought I didn't really want to leave London. So the aim was to pursue another job within being a news correspondent, but to stay in London. So I took a year out and decided to try teacher training. And I really did see it as a finite year. I thought, let me complete my training and then I'm going to go back into my career as a journalist, and just never looked back. From the day that I toured a school and just started interacting with the students, absolutely fell in love. And then I started working in East London in quite a deprived community, but in a city school in London. Absolutely loved it. And I said to my husband about a month in, I said, don't think I'm leaving this. And he said, yeah, I didn't think so. Just absolutely loved it. I've never looked back.
Wow. And then what made you make that leap to the United Arab Emirates?
Again, it was actually not my own decision. So my husband got a job out here. I was very heavily pregnant at the time. And actually at the time I was really, really in love with the school I was working at. Loved the team, loved the whole school community. So I was actually a bit cross that we were moving to Dubai because it meant I would have to leave that wonderful job. However, then I got here, had my second son, and around 8 months later, started working here. So initially at Jumeirah College, and then later at Repton Al Barsha. And I must say, I absolutely love it. And for all, it's such a familiar story, isn't it? People come and they think they're only going to be here for a few years, and then there they are 10 years later, not looking to move at all. And it really does. Dubai gets you. It's such a wonderful place to live. And I'm very, very settled here.
Brilliant. Quick question though, what's your leadership journey been like? So I know you started off teaching in London, you say teaching chemistry, but talk to me about your journey to leadership.
So the school that I was at initially, the school that I trained at in the beginning, it had quite a lot of teach first teachers. And if you're familiar with that, the program is very much designed to encourage teachers to go into leadership quite quickly. And the leadership development is a big part of that program. I actually did a GTP, but I was in that community of teachers where that was very normal. So it was very normal in my second year. I started leading up the sixth form science department, which was still a relatively new area. We were opening a sixth form, and a year later I was deputy head of the sixth form, and that was just very normal. And I learned a lot from doing that, made a lot of mistakes, and naturally we continue to do so. But it meant that I had to think quite strategically about how a school was going to develop at an early stage of my career. And then I actually moved out of London, again with my husband's job. We moved up north and back to Leeds, actually. So I was working in Leeds, and that was my first senior leadership role as an assistant head at a school in Woodhouse. And just a few years later, again, had to move with my husband's job. There's no more moving with my husband's job. I've told him now, by the way. And then moved to Dubai. And then I was assistant principal at Jumeirah College, and then became head of senior school here a few years ago. But it feels like such a whirlwind. You have to learn very quickly. And particularly in a growing school, there's an element of you build the bridge as you walk along it. But I'm incredibly privileged and so fortunate to have been inspired by so many great leaders, many of whom you have interviewed, actually, who I regularly look to for advice, because we don't have all the answers. So and I couldn't have done any of this without the advice of great leaders.
For sure. So I was a Teach First mentor back in London all those years ago, and there were some incredibly brilliant young teachers that come through that program, some of whom I still keep in contact with, some of whom have gone on to be head teachers in different schools across the UK. So it was, for what it's worth, a really good program. I do know that there were others who kind of left after their 2 years. You know, they were like, okay, 2 years, I'm done. But there were some like yourself who fell in love with teaching and with education, and actually stayed and carried on in that vein. So my question to you is, when it comes to leadership and to, just aspiring, what do you think a key trait is that leaders should have? Just one.
Humility.
Mm.
And I think within humility comes so many other aspects, being reflective, being able to really own your mistakes and your successes. And I think with humility, you naturally foster a sense of teamwork and connection, because nobody likes to be around an arrogant person. I certainly don't. But it's tricky because often I think there's been a misconception that, of course, leaders have to be confident, but there's a difference between confidence and arrogance. And as soon as you slip into arrogance, then actually you're not going to take your team with you. And you're not going to have that sort of strong connection and retention of your team, which I think is so important in schools, particularly in places like Dubai, where naturally there is a more movement. When you're building and when you're really trying to establish, particularly for myself as a relatively new principal, it's really important that people understand that I'm willing to make mistakes, I'm willing to reflect on them, and to maintain that humility. So that's one of the ones that I always stick to. Humble leadership is really important to me.
It is. I love the fact that you chose humility. I was hoping you'd choose empathy, but you chose humility, which is all
I feel like
comes.
empathy comes within that too.
It's all in the same vein. I'll tell you what happens, Chandini, is that a lot of people mistake humility for weakness. They mistake it for not having a firm grasp on strategies and policies. They think if the leader is humble, it gives them an opportunity to overstep their boundaries. How do you handle people who try to look at you as a young woman? Because I can tell from looking at you that you are a young woman. How do you handle the people who think it's okay to try and overstep that boundary just a little bit?
No, it's a really interesting. I'm not getting any younger, but I did get into leadership of schools relatively young, and certainly when we look at school leaders, I'm really inspired when I see other school leaders that have had a similar journey to myself. And there are a lot of assumptions that people can make, and you're absolutely right. And we come across it all the time. And it's not even just to do with my stage as a school leader or where I'm up to. There are people make assumptions about you as soon as they look at you, as soon as they hear you speak. But I think it's about building trust. It's about showing that you have integrity. You have to have difficult conversations as a leader. None of us enjoy having the really difficult ones, but it's part of the remit. But you can still do so by maintaining kindness and humility, empathy.
My word.
Yeah, and I think that when you do that, very quickly those assumptions fall away. There's a strength in being empathetic. It's not weak to be humble. It's not weak to be vulnerable. In fact, I think it builds more trust.
It certainly does. All right, enough about school, Chantini. Enough about education, all the serious stuff. Because this podcast is called Behind the Principal's Desk. So we want to know you. When you take off your blazer and kick off your heels, what do you do to relax?
I am a big foodie, as I love cooking and I love exploring authentic places to eat in Dubai. So yes, there are all of the glossy places in Dubai, and I love those too. But I really love seeking out some of the more hidden gems in Dubai. So that's something I really enjoy. And then I love trying to replicate those recipes at home. I love exploring the desert with my family. I have two sons, and we've just recently adopted a dog who also loves obviously being outdoors. So we do really enjoy that. And I just realize every time I do it how unfit I am. So it's my New Year's resolution to start making sure that I stay fit. And then I'm going to lose any shred of street cred that I have, but was not into creative arts at school. I feel like that's something I got into later in life, but I now just I love drawing and painting and cross stitch. I think that's it. The street cred is now gone, but I love cross stitch. Any other fans of cross stitch out there who are school leaders, reach out to me.
You lost me at the cross stitch. No, 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 no. That's not true. I mean, I can respect the thing. I just won't partake.
Give
But
it a go, Lisa. I promise. I promise you'll like it.
I have
But
no
otherwise,
intention.
obsessed with podcasts as well. I'm always tuned into a podcast. My SLT joked with me about how much I'm saying, oh, have you listened to this? And trying out a new podcast of a variety of genres, and then reading as well. So I used to read a lot more fiction than I do now, but it was all sort of crime and thrillers. That's my go-to genre.
What's some of your podcasts apart from Teach Middle East podcast? What are some of your podcasts so people can also tune in?
So I listen to the Times news briefing every day. That's my morning while I have time to myself getting ready. I'll have the Times news briefing on, and then I'll usually follow that with a bit of The Economist, any of the free episodes that I can get hold of, and the New Statesman, and then naturally the education-based one. So Mind the Gap is excellent. I used to love Becoming Educated as well, and then the International Schools podcast. But it's so funny because if you look at my Spotify selection of podcasts, I've got all of that, so relatively quite serious podcasts, and then I've got all of my true crime that I love. So Serial, Crazy in Love, I love dipping into that as well. Could be seen as a little bit trashy, but I love it.
No, I do love a little bit of true crime as well, to be honest. I do listen to that when I want to switch off. People always think, you have to have one type thing. No, you don't. If I want to really relax, I put on reality TV. And I get deep into it, like no disrespect. I love a Dubai bling, a Real Housewives. I just do. But I don't think. When I'm watching things like that, I don't think. I just watch and giggle. And sometimes God help him, I get my husband to sit there and watch it with me. And he's like, what is my life right now? Why am
Yeah.
I?
So I haven't got into reality TV as much, but I have a lot of friends who love it. But the true crime stuff I really love. And again, my husband has the same reaction. He's like, oh gosh, what is this now that you're delving into? But it's funny because even with music, I think there's a lot of people who like one specific genre of music will quite often be a little bit distasteful about people who like something very different. And I've always loved such a variety of music, of books, of programs. I just think if you like something, you like it. That's
Yeah, you
okay if
do.
it's to somebody else's taste.
So music, what are you into?
Again, a real variety. As a 90s kid, I did all of the 90s dance music, the Spice Girls, the Blink 182, the Destiny's Child, all of that. So all of the commercial stuff. But more recently, I loved the hip hop, the old school hip hop. And again, I may have lost some people there too, but I
But
still
you've
really,
gained some.
yeah. That's true. And then more recently, I'm really enjoying Solange. There are some greats that are still really enjoy house music, but a variety, really. It's again, if you looked at my Spotify playlist, you'd see such a mix of music. And I think that's great. I think it's important that we stay open-minded in all aspects. You can love one area of anything, but be open-minded to explore something else.
For sure, for sure. You're a foodie. So what have you been discovering in Dubai? What spots have you discovered that are like off the beaten track?
I guess I probably think they are, but they're probably classics that people know about. But have you been to Three Phils?
No.
Oh,
Oh, by the
okay.
way, I am an Abu Dhabi girl through and through. I know nothing about Dubai, nothing at all.
Okay. Okay. So you need to tell me when you're next here, and I'm going to give you a list of places to check out. So Three Phils it used to be very small. It's now just expanded. Restaurant in Jumeirah Harbour, seafood based, but again, very authentic, delicious food. And it used to be a bit more of a hidden gem. It's now, because it's become popular, it's expanded a little bit. And then I love Indian food. I mean, naturally, that's my go-to. So Calicut Paragon, if you like your Indian seafood, is excellent. And again, these are nothing fancy. These, you go in, you know, plastic chairs, sit down, but the food is absolutely incredible. And you get to see such a spectrum of Dubai enjoying that food, which is wonderful. You've probably heard of Ravi.
Yes.
That's another establishment. Yeah, really, really good. And then a noodle bowl. I don't know if you've heard of that. Again, very, very humble Chinese restaurant, but fantastic food.
Okay. But do you cook?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I love to cook. I love to cook. It's now about finding the time and the energy, because sometimes, and Dubai is, again, there's so much opportunity to order great food home. It's very tempting, but I do love to cook. And I'll be looking on Instagram for recipes, looking online for different recipes, and then putting my own spin on them. I started writing a recipe book, actually. I need to make sure I keep updating that.
Wow. What's your go-to? What's your thing that you make at home that it just makes you feel, okay, this is home?
For comfort food, yeah. I mean, in India, in Orissa, the state that I grew up in, it was all about fish and seafood. So for me, it's still all about the fish, the rice, you have the veggies on the side, that kind of staple Indian meal that I still love. For me, that's proper comfort food.
Nice. I do love Indian food, but I think the Indian food that I love is very English, because I've been told by my Indian friends that what I'm eating isn't really Indian food. Because they're like, oh, you with your Rogan Josh and your
Yeah, chicken tikka masala.
korma and tikka masala, and they're like, that's Lisa, that is not typical Indian food. But I guess that's what, we grew up with in London, and we just thought, well, that's Indian food and we love it. Anyway, quick fire round. Are you ready?
Italians feel the same.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. All right, so we're gonna do some quick fire round. Play along. Anything that you're not happy with, just let me know. We can
Oh, I'm
always.
nervous about this. Okay, let's go.
We're good. We're good. What makes you angry? What makes you angry?
Oh, gosh, that's a tricky one, because I feel like you have a lot of small things that might upset me, but generally I'm very measured. But I guess, yeah, real unkindness, lack of empathy.
Yeah.
That makes, and I shouldn't, and as an empathetic person, you should try not to respond. But that does make me feel quite upset and angry when I see that around.
Yeah, no, it's one of those questions that kind of catches you off guard. But sometimes, like for myself, injustice makes me
Mm.
upset. If you want to get me angry, let me be in a restaurant where somebody is being rude to the wait staff or the servers just because they can. That's the end
Mm.
of the meal for me. Like
Yeah.
I'm done.
I mean, that kind of, yeah. It's not, I wouldn't even say abuse of power, because it's not abuse of power. It's disregard, isn't it? That makes me cross as well.
See? Okay. Awesome. All right, let's take it back to happy. If you could go anywhere on a holiday, where would you go and why?
So I really want to go to Japan. I've never been. I'd love to visit Tokyo. I've heard so much. But just as a city, it seems so unique. And not like anywhere else I have visited. So Japan is on my hit list. And then we really loved going on safari. And my husband and I went on safari for our honeymoon. But I'd love to do that again.
Where did you go for safari?
We were in Tanzania and in Kenya. So yeah, it was just wonderful. Not long enough. And I would love to go back and take the kids now that they're a little bit older and they can manage the early starts and the relatively long drives and long days. That's something else we'd love to do.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So if you had okay, I was gonna say if you won the lottery, but I remember where we are. If you got a bag of money for a day and you had to go out and spend it, what would you go out and buy?
Gosh, I'm really not that into stuff. I'd probably want to use it to have experiences. I'm not entirely against trying the skydive. I'm okay with heights. So something like that, a memorable experience. And to be honest, when it comes to birthdays and buying gifts for other people or receiving gifts from other people, I'm all about experiences rather than stuff. I feel like just not that into things like that anymore.
Yeah.
Go on a fantastic trip, or go and try out an amazing restaurant. That's that sort of thing.
Amazing. So, just in case your husband listens to this podcast, because we like to drop hints, I was talking to Matthew Burfield from GEMS Founders, the principal of GEMS Founders, and I was saying you need to take your wife on a holiday. Because just in case she listens, we like to stir things a little bit. What could your husband do for you that would make you extremely happy? Gift, experience, what could it be?
Do you know what? I think the best thing that we can give anybody that we love is our time. And we're all very, very busy, and we raise kids and school leaders, or we're teachers, we're professionals. Life is very busy. And I think just time together, reminiscing, laughing, joking. I think that's a really boring answer, isn't it?
No, it's
But
I want truth. Give me truth.
yeah,
My listeners know
I
that.
think time away, yeah, time together, time spent with family. I think it's important. We also make sure that we spend some time without the kids too, because that's important as well. So yeah, just time, and then whatever you choose to do with it, whether it's exploring a new country, going out into nature. I think the best thing you can give anybody is your time.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And don't worry about the answers. If you've listened to this podcast, as I think you have, and others, you would know what we want is we want to know you. And so if your answer seems boring, it isn't. It is the truth. And that's what we want. Raising two boys in Dubai, how do you keep them grounded?
Gosh, yeah, really good question, because I often think about this with students too. And again, there's a lot of misconceptions, I think, about Dubai. Certainly when I speak to my friends in the UK, and I actually think it's completely possible. And I've seen so many wonderful grounded students, and grounded adults. I think it's just about making sure that you apply importance to the most important things. Um, there is so much that you can do in Dubai that doesn't have a huge cost attached to it. And there's a lot that you can explore that isn't just the glitz and the glam. But even having said that, children get their values from the adults that they see around them. So I think that's how you manage it, just by making sure that you're also prioritizing the right things, or the right things for you. Because also, let's not judge. People enjoy different things. And luckily, Dubai caters for such a wide range of interests. So just explore them.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're so right. And for I ask that question a lot because my boys, there are times when they come out with things that make me go, you are really out of touch with reality. Like, but it's their reality versus mine. And how do I expect them to understand any of the hardships? I mean, me as an immigrant moving to the UK as a young girl, and they won't get that. They don't understand that because they live a different life. But I'm also very curious. So I asked you that question selfishly because as a mom, I want to know what tips people have for keeping their kids' feet firmly planted on the ground.
Yeah, and it's a really good point to raise, because I feel the same. I feel like I saw the struggle around me as a child, and I wonder how much are they really exposed to that here. And you hear the phrase, "Oh, Dubai is a bubble," and in many ways, it's people feel that way because it's just so different. The networks that you have here, the safety, we really are so fortunate to live here. And I think that's what gets lost when people just assume that it's one way of living, when it really isn't. But it is possible for young people to understand struggle, and understand experiences of people from a diverse range of backgrounds. What a wonderful place to do it here. But yeah, they don't have to have seen what we traditionally define as, okay, I saw that growing up and therefore it's given me these values. You can still transfer those values.
Yeah, yes. Take heart, Lisa. Your child, they won't be soft. They can go back to Tottenham and hold their own or not.
Oh, yes. When they have to learn those things, they'll learn those things.
They have no idea. They don't know how to take a bus. And they're in secondary school. There's a whole other podcast by itself. But quick one for you. For women who are aspiring to leadership, younger, middle-aged, older, it doesn't matter. What advice, if any, do you have for them?
It's a cliched thing to be authentic, but I think for any leader, the minute that you start trying to be what you think others want from you, rather than just, and that's hard to keep that up. When you're just not being yourself, you realize that you don't have the capacity to keep doing that forever. It's actually quite draining. So, maintain your integrity. I think that's everything, because it's really hard to keep doing something when there's an elephant in the room and you know that it's not actually what you would do if no one was looking. And that's really how we define the culture in our organizations. But yeah, stay authentic, and also find an organization, a school, whatever it might be, even if not in education, but the values have to align with your own, because again, otherwise you're almost pretending, and that's exhausting. So find somewhere that really aligns with your own values, and be the head that you want to be in that school. And if you feel that that's not who you are, and that's not working, then serve elsewhere. Find somewhere to serve a community where all of those things align, because that's when you find your ikigai. That's when it doesn't feel like work anymore.
Amazing, amazing. Good response, which takes me to your community and the work you're doing at Repton Al-Barsha. And congratulations on your outstanding BSO rating. Talk to me about what makes Repton Al-Barsha a special place for learners and staff alike.
Oh, I'm very biased, but it is, you just have to step into the school to feel the warmth that oozes from every corner. I think with being a through school, and previously I'd only ever worked in secondary only settings, so this is my first experience of working in a through school. But there is something really wonderful about having children as young as 3 looking up to the senior students on one campus. So I think that's one of the things that makes it really special. And to see those older students interacting with the younger students is wonderful. Our parents are such a wonderful presence and really supportive of the school community. And I think that's wonderful. And the staff, I love the staff body. Very, very fortunate to have joined a school where the staff are so invested in the student experience. So you bring all those things together. Of course, it's a wonderful place to work. Now, of course, I'm the head, I would say that, but it's something that I feel it's not, every head of every school is sometimes struggling. There's not any head in the world that will say that there aren't challenges. And of course there are. They come our way every day. And one of the beauties of the job is you don't know what's coming through the door. But again, as I said, I found my ikigai because of the way that those things all align with my own values.
Brilliant. And so with all of that, you end up with a community and a culture that's been rated outstanding. Congratulations to your team and to yourself. And obviously, it wouldn't be right to not mention the fact that in any school and in every school, there are areas that you're looking to improve. So at Repton Al-Barsha, what are you guys looking at as your next move, your next step to being even better?
We're expanding into a 6th form in August, so that's really exciting. And the senior school is still a relatively newer entity across the whole school. So that's really where we want to ensure that students, that the junior school has been running for a lot longer. We want to make sure that that journey all the way through to 18 is such an incredible student experience that the students leave us and say, well, I'm still a Reptonian. I still look back fondly at my time at Repton Al-Barsha. And then all of the things feed into that. So then you start looking at the curriculum and you get it more granular and you're looking at teaching and learning. But making sure, I think, that experience for the students and they're building their confidence, their character, their compassion, their curiosity is a different journey in FS than it is in sixth form. But the way that journey aligns all the way through, that for me is the vision now, because we're going to end up with year 13 completed in a couple of years. We've got to make sure that journey is a wonderful one for the students.
Amazing. Thank you, Chandini. That wasn't too bad, wasn't it? It was great for me. I don't know about you. I loved that.
Oh, I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks for being my guest on the podcast.
Thank you.